Good evening, good evening, good evening, and welcome to Couch Conversations with the Doctors, where health is wealth. What night is it tonight? It is Monday night, and it is time for Couch Conversations with the Doctors. So we just want to remind you to share as always. And remember that Couch Conversations is on, it's the first of the year, and we have robust conversations. So join us on this Monday night and invite your friends. Right now, we're going to go around, as always, introducing our esteemed panel. And we're going to start with the guy who has the greatest art there is, our art connoisseur, our very own Joseph Harrington. Hey, Joe.
Thank you, Nikki, and thank you, Congressman Davis, for providing this platform, allowing us to share our thoughts, our opinions, and what we've learned over the years. My name is Joe Harrington. I'm retired, but very active. My career was mostly in public health and healthcare, but I did work in mental health and education as well. I retired in 2017 from the Illinois Department of Public Health, where I was the regional health officer for Cook County and an administrative law judge.
Outstanding, outstanding. Well, to that physician who is a physician by day, and that's a great infectious disease physician, but a DJ by night. That's our very own Dr. P. Dr. P.
Hey, Nikki, thanks so much. I'm excited to be here with my esteemed colleagues, and hopefully we can explore and educate the community. And I always learn something whenever I'm here. And so appreciate Congressman Davis and yourself for creating this platform. I'm an internal medicine physician by trade, but I am also a medical director and interim chief medical officer at Howard Brown. Excited to be here.
Thank you so very much. Well, to my colleague who tends to leave us and go and have fun in the sun. But I think we're in a weather debate now, and that's our very own Dr. Graham. Hey, Dr. Graham. Hey,
Hey,
Doug.
Nikki, I want to let you know that it's 3 days of rain. I'm about ready to blow up my inflatable kayak in case I got to get out. Um, I'm a retired physician. I worked for 30 years in the western suburbs and then spent 2 years working with a congressman in his office in Washington, D.C. It really opened my eyes to public health and public service. It's a very honored to be here with my colleagues and the congressman, and we're going to try and answer your questions as best we can.
Outstanding. Well, to that physician who is the weight loss guru, our family practice medicine doctor, our very own Dr. Tony Hampton. And Dr. Hampton, before you introduce yourself, there is a gentleman who has told me to give you a message about 6 times, and it's my fault I've been forgetting. And that is Bernard Clay from
Oh,
Introspect. So
yeah,
Bernard says he needs you to call him.
absolutely. Bernard is a big foundational person in my life because as Silas Purnell has helped lead the South Side to help young people of color get to college, he was one of the foundational people who gave me guidance on the west side of Chicago. So shout out to the Bernard and all the work he's done over the years to help lead us to higher education. So, but for those who don't know me, I'm a family and obesity doctor with Advocate Health. I work on the south side of Chicago, helping to share the food is medicine message to those who will listen. So I'm really excited to be here. And we do everything in healthcare, but we always start with the fork. So thank you for the opportunity, Nikki.
Outstanding, outstanding. Well, to our guest who is here with us on tonight, we have a very special guest who is an outstanding media personality, but he is also one of the most well-dressed men that I know, and he's the owner of Legacy Men's Boutique, and that's our very own brother Mandine Mohammed. Hey, Mandine.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Miss Nikki, Congressman Davis. I'm Mandine Mohammed. I'm a member of CROW, the Coalition for the Members of Elijah Muhammad. We have a media wing, CROW Media, that many people from not only Chicago but all over the country and the world have been on. And I'm not a doctor, but we do have a plethora of doctors and physicians on the show, and we look forward to having you all on and as well. And to be honest, I've watched the broadcast on Monday several times. I always share it to my social media page, but I never in the life of me thought I would be on here. So this is truly an honor and a surprise. So I thank you so much, ma'am, and I hope to learn more so than anything else.
Well, we want to say hello to Bonnie Smetley, who is here with us. She says good evening. Also to Connie Taylor, who is here, and she says good evening. To the Core Center, who is texting, yes, good evening. The Core Center is here. Of course, they are working, but they are watching just as well. And to our guys who pile up in their garage, and I don't know how they do it in the winter, but they are watching just as well. And one says, "I'm kind of sad that the Bears lost." Okay, we're going to talk about that. That may come up in some form of a conversation. But thank you so very much for watching. To Carrie Steele, who is here with us. Hey, President Steele, thank you for watching just as well on Monday nights. Well, to the man who makes this possible for us each and every Monday night, to the one who truly teaches us that true wealth is your health. That's our very own Congressman of the Illinois 7th Congressional District, Congressman Danny K. Davis. Congressman?
Well, let me thank all of our guests and just embellish a little bit. Bernard Clay just left our office not very long ago. And of course, we are very proud of the fact that Bernard started an agency more than 50 years ago.
Mm.
He is still around, still running that agency, Introspect Youth Services. But I also knew Bernard's mother, who was an activist in our community and contributed significantly to the evolution and development of the community where I live and work. And we're very proud of the work that Bernard has done. I also want to welcome Brother Mandeem. He brings memories to me of one. We took 3 busloads of individuals to the first Million Man March. And of course, one of the buses broke down when we got back to Laramie and Harrison Street. But we did, and we had one driver who did not have a relief driver.
Oh, wow.
The relief driver did not show up. And so he drove all the way to Washington by himself. And while we went to the march, he went to the Y and went to sleep. Because when we left, we got right back on the buses and came back. And he drove again all the way back. The second Million Man March, I was fortunate to acquire the permit for the march to use the grounds.
That's right.
Then I had become a member of Congress, and it was Brother, uh, 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 not
Leonard?
Leonard, Brother Leonard Farrakhan Muhammad, asked me if I could assist in getting the permit to use the grounds. And by then I was a member of Congress, and we did acquire the permit to use the grounds for the staging of the second march. So we've had a long and fruitful relationship with the Nation of Islam, and I thank you for joining with us. I guess we're really ready to go into a
Thank you.
new year, and I look forward to what everybody got to say, and I'll see if I can think of something to chip in with. I'm returning from a little trip I took to one of my classmates who celebrated his 65th year wedding anniversary on Saturday. And it was wonderful seeing relatives and friends that I had not seen, some of them for 35 or 40 years, and some even longer than that. So I'm feeling pretty good and I won't complain. So let's get it on.
Outstanding. Want to say hey to Audrey J. Cox, who is here with us. She says, good evening to everyone. Well, Joe, tonight is your night. Take us away.
Thank you, Nikki. I had a chance to talk with Nikki earlier today, and we talked about having a discussion about men's health. And I see we have Dr. Maya has to join us, so we have a panel full of men. So I'm sure they have something to say, and specifically about the health and health status of Black men in America. Um, one of the things that's always been concerning to me, and actually, Dr. Eric Whitaker, whom I know very well, and when he was the director of Project Brotherhood, I really admired the work that he was doing. And one of the things that he used to say is Black men in America have a lower life expectancy than some men in third world countries. And that always struck me. Another thing that he would say, and this may help us get into the discussion, and it probably is the same today as it was when he said these words. He said, Black men take better care of their cars than themselves. And so, as a result of that, we typically tend to die sooner and have more conditions that we don't take care of that cause to our early demise. So I'm going to stop there and maybe toss it to Pete because he can talk personally about his experience at Project Brotherhood. And I think it's important not only for him to talk about that, but to let them know that there is a clinic that still exists uh, that is focused on the health of Black men. So why don't you take from there, Pete, and you might want to toss it to somebody else. But this will get us into a robust discussion.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. So I have very vivid um, memories of what we did then. Um, and one of the things that I think that separated Project Brotherhood from a lot of places is that we looked at health from a holistic lens. It wasn't just narrowed down to a particular disease process, because we realized that all of these diseases come from a social construct, right? So we would look at one pillar, the definition of health. The World Health Organization says that health is a state of complete mental, physical, and spiritual well being, not merely the absence of disease and infirmity. So, by creating an environment where you are whole mentally, whole physically, and whole spiritually, and I think because of the historical construct of racism um, in this country, it created an environment where a lot of Black men and men of color are not whole, even when you're financially whole. If you notice, we would see men who was doing well financially, but still had some of the high morbidity and mortality of some diseases that should have been well taken care of with the amount of resources that they had. But again, that's the mental, physical, and spiritual well-being. Um, and I think that these principles still hold true. And we when we take care of men, we have to look at them from a holistic lens. And so I have plenty of my patients who come to see me, and they might be doing well from a physical blood pressure A1C lens, but then when you dig deeper, they have some deep rooted trauma that they're dealing with, right? And sometimes some of that blood pressure issue is about that unaddressed, unresolved trauma that they're dealing with. So, I mean, I don't want to belabor it, but Dr. Hampton, I know um, you and I have been practicing medicine for a minute, and we come from similar backgrounds, and so yeah, definitely share some of your experiences in terms of taking care of Black men.
Yeah, I think it's really just recognizing the struggle that men of color may face, Black men in particular, because there's this daily exposure to I call it microaggressions. People they sometimes look at us as a threat when we're not really a threat. My kids walk around with hoodies and hairstyles that maybe their dad would suggest they shouldn't wear, but they look like the typical kid. Nobody knows that they have master's degrees at top 20 schools and all of that. They just look like the typical. So a lot of times, we often are we shouldn't be surprised when we see people struggle when they are in a chronic stress environment. They're trying to kind of take care of their families or themselves. And when you're chronically stressed, you're going to increase the stress hormones in your body. So now your cortisol stress hormone is elevated, and your risk for a lot of the health conditions that hurt us, high insulin levels. We talk about insulin resistance. So, and that one little thing can lead to high blood pressure and having a big belly and not sleeping well and feeling inflamed. Not to mention, I can't sleep well because I have maybe I have to work the night shift, or maybe I have one and a half or two jobs. And when you start to add it all together, it's very frustrating because you may work as hard as the guy who has better pay, maybe a better opportunity, but nobody really, they say work harder, but it's hard to work harder when the income you get from working harder is not able to pay the bills. So it's very frustrating, which is why so many men of color will, resort to other means. And it's like, so you try to, it's like they can't get ahead. And then you live in a health system that doesn't really treat them with dignity and respect. So many times when I've had a patient frustrated at the front desk, and I know who they are, and they may look a little intimidating because they have a tattoo on their neck, and they may be a little built in a way that may intimidate the team. And they're not just intimidating people of other races, even the people that look like them, because we judge people based on how they talk, based on how they look, and we don't pause for a moment to say, well, is there a why behind the anger or the frustration? And so we need to live in a world where we have more empathetic people who can look at that person and say, I see you, right? And a lot of times they're not being seen, so they get frustrated. They come to the health system expecting to be treated in a way that doesn't honor them, and then they get frustrated. So then they show a side of themselves that was really triggered by the experience they were having, but was also triggered by the experience they've had in the past. So we want to live in a world where we are able to understand that struggle, and then create a place where the teams who are there to provide care understand how to approach that person in a way that lifts them, in a way that allows them to kind of feel comfortable. So, and some of that starts with having more people of color in healthcare, having people who are also reminded that they may see a person struggle and what to do in that situation. So there's a lot of things we can do better, but the main thing is we do not see them. And when we do see them, we don't see them as who they are. So if I see somebody with a tattoo on their neck, it may be a single dad trying to raise, two children. And we don't see that. We only see maybe the historical perspective that we've had. And this is the part that's amazing as I kind of wrap up my introductory comments. I have to remind myself when I see what other people see, not to behave like other people behave. Even as a person, a Black male myself, if I see young guys on the corner, I have to remind myself they're not necessarily what you think they are. So I think that's something we all should do. And then we have to ask ourselves, if somebody treated me a certain way, how would I behave? Would I be angry? Would I be upset? Would I be, not have the patience to behave in a world where we expect people to behave a certain way? So it's been an interesting journey. I feel privileged that I've had a chance to maybe, get an education. And I grew up on Costner and Jackson on the West Side, and many of the young men that I grew up with are either not here anymore, or they certainly have had a different life that I've had. So I want us to all kind of reach back and say, hey, we see you. And if we see them, then maybe they'll have the opportunity to move forward in a different way.
I think also it should be stated too that having a workforce that looks like the patient population. So right now, the situation is African Americans make
Dire.
up about 13% of the population,
Hmm.
but we only make up maybe 4% of the physicians in terms of black physicians, and then black male
Mostly
physicians,
female.
mostly
Mostly
female.
female.
Right.
Mhm.
Predominantly
So we're
female.
right. So we're only about 2% of physicians, and so it's I mean, I think it's important that when some people feel comfortable navigating the healthcare system, they feel comfortable asking for what they believe that they deserve in terms of if I think I need an MRI, there are certain populations that will well that will speak up and say, hey, I need this, and tell me why I can't get it, and they'll tell their insurance company that, they'll tell the office that, they'll tell the manager that, and so I try to create an environment where our men of color feel like that this is for you too. And so you have every right to voice your opinion, and you shouldn't have to get loud about it. You should be able to just ask for what you want, and let's see if we can get it for you. Because so many years our men have been in situations where they did not feel empowered to navigate those systems, and so having that as a basis is very important. Mr. Muhammad, would you like to comment on this, my brother?
Absolutely, yes, sir. But I have a question first. Project Brother, was that the clinic over on the south side on Woodlawn?
Yep.
I
Yeah.
have to I have to bear you witness. I went there a few times.
Oh,
Uh,
good,
yeah,
good.
so it
That's
was.
that's that's
I,
awesome, man.
I got excellent. I made an attempt to go there and found out that it wasn't at the location anymore. I was deeply hurt. So I'm glad to hear
Yeah,
that it's still in existence though. But
yeah.
if you have the first time I went there, I was sent there with a note from the young lady I was courting at the time, and the doctor looked at the note, and he looked at me, and he looked at the note again, and he chuckled and said, "You're gonna live a long time if you stay with her." But
I love it.
I say that to say that prior to that, I didn't think about going to the doctor. As much as we talk about health, especially in the nation, how to eat to live and all of that. I didn't go to the doctor. If nothing was falling off or blood wasn't leaking out uncontrollably, I figured I'd just walk it on off. But it wasn't until then that I really started, as I got older, really taking a hold of my health and being more serious about it. And I'm a big proponent. I encourage my peers and those younger than me to see what's going on. When women, whatever color they are, when they if they sneeze wrong, they go into the doctor then the next day. But I try to encourage my peers, men in general, just to go to the doctor, see what's going on, even if everything is okay. That way, if you go there, if everything is okay, everything is okay. But if not, then at least you'll find out what's happening. But to be honest with you, I really what is it, Dr. Hampton, that what you had to say about the young men? Because hey, I'm on 47th Street as far as my little small business is concerned, and it's an array of characters over there. But and look, we all judge based off of appearance. It's no need in even lying about it. But I think the issue is if we don't engage and find out who we're dealing with, that's the problem right there. So if we start engaging more with these young people and just people in general, you'll find out that they may not speak as well as the doctors that are on with me this evening, but they're not ignorant either. They just have a different way of expressing themselves, and they just need a lot of times they just need somebody to talk to. So we just have to engage and not judge based off of appearance, or try not to, I should say, or at least find out what's going on with them. If the pants are sagging low, like, hey, what's going on, man? I see you got a belt on. I mean, am I supposed to see your underwear, or is it part of? It's not often what you say, it's how you say it, and
Yeah.
so just that's the fact that you're engaging with them, it'll break the ice. But look, I again, I'm really overwhelmed to be a part of this panel right now. So I'm really whatever you need me to jump in, I'm more than excited to do so. But I've learned so much in just the beginning, and it's just two of y'all that have spoken so far. Three with Dr. Harris, Mr. Harrington. But I'm enjoying this so much. So I want to continue to listen. I hope I can just add something to the conversation.
I didn't know
I
you
want
had
to.
a business. I always just thought you dressed to impress. You know,
Well,
you-
I do enough to keep the hanks off, but I do have a small business, but lately I've been treating it like a hobby. But you know, my responsibilities have picked up here at Crow, and so this is why I have the small business. So I have to make sure that we're good, and
Yeah.
this is why I'm on the panel tonight is because of Crow, because Brother Munir Muhammad has been a um, um, a facilitator, whether directly or indirectly. So this one is directly and indirectly, because if it wasn't for him, being with him and being introduced to the majority of you people there, of you all there, I wouldn't be a part of this panel this evening. So I'm forever grateful to him, and I don't take this lightly.
I'm so
Yeah.
delighted because we also have heard Eric Whitaker mentioned a couple of times. And of course, Eric and his wonderful wife, Cheryl, um, who are both physicians, but they're also business people.
Mm.
Eric has created and started Zing Health.
Right.
And Zing was with us just before Christmas. We had a senior luncheon with about 800 or 900 people in attendance.
Mm.
And Zing was there with gifts for all of the people who came, passing out Christmas gifts and that kind of thing. So Eric has been very creative, and there are people who have levels of creativity. And one of the things that I say, and one of the places that African Americans have not achieved either, is in the world of economics. And so I'm just delighted that Eric and Cheryl have been able to develop Zing,
Mm.
which is a health insurance company. I mean, that's what it is. It's
Mm.
a health insurance company, and people can get their health insurance from Zing. I'm also pleased that the National Association of Community Health Centers have invited, they started a newsletter this year, and they've only done one copy, one edition, but they've invited us, the 7th District of Illinois, to produce the next one. And
Mm.
so the one that will come out in January this month will be a depiction of what community health centers have done for a geographic area. And so we are working on that right now because not only have they provided health care, but they've also created great economic benefit, millions and millions and millions of dollars in money, as well as opportunities for people to become employed, to learn a profession or a trade, to get a job, to take care of themselves. So all of this is really a part of the movement towards equity and towards opportunity. So I just thought I'd mention Eric in that context relative to what he has been able to do, not only as a health practitioner, but also as a health business person.
Mm. Excellent.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of the things that can lead to a successful human being, whether it's an African American male or otherwise, is just having time to focus on what matters. And I think something as simple as how do you think about it this way? Like I'm a huge sports fan, and shout out to the Bears. I'm praying for the Bulls. But think about the time that we spend doing the things that don't add value. Now, I have no problem with gamers. I know we have a lot of gamers, but imagine if we could just carve out some time to have a mentor or someone to say, okay, if you invest $100 a month for the next 40 years, you're guaranteed to be a millionaire. I mean, who doesn't have $100 a month? I just put a video on YouTube about Starbucks and talking about how much sugar is in a coffee. But when I talk to my patients who come to the house with their Starbucks, they're paying $6, $7, $8 for coffee. Now, I think it's a cute looking emblem. It's nice. It makes you feel it matches your nice suit, Mr. Muhammad, to have a Starbucks coffee. But imagine $8 times 30, right? Days of the year. And even if we cut it down a little bit, you'll have enough money to be a millionaire. So imagine if we taught young Black men, you're guaranteed to be a millionaire with $100 a month if you start in your 20s. Those foundational principles, those are the things that we have to teach people, because I think a lot of times you don't really see your potential because you haven't seen, like, one of the best books I read when I was younger was called The Barber Next Door. And it's a story, and the barber just has a conversation with you. And as you know, the barber's like your therapist, right? So the barber is telling people who sit in his seat how to invest and how he became a millionaire. Now, you would never know he was a millionaire because he's very, he's not, dressing as nice as Mr. Muhammad, right? He's just wearing a barber outfit, right? But the whole point of it is we have so many things that we could teach the next generation that doesn't require that they become a doctor. You can have a very blue collar job with some very specific habits that will then lead to success. And then you teach your children the same thing. My hope is that when I die, I will leave some resources for my children so that they can then be able to kind of take that to the next level, so that we can start having more insurance companies that are led by people of color, and more health systems that are led by people of color. And I just think that we have to do a better job. The good news is the templates for that are pretty much out there. Sometimes you see it in other cultures. And if we can just notice, not be jealous, but say, you know what, they're doing something that's very effective. How can we start with our family first, and then we maybe have a partnership with someone that we're close. I've been knowing Dr. Pete forever. I mean, we went to the same college, same medical school. We're fraternity brothers. And so I trust him, right? So if I did something, it would be with someone like him. And why not do that? And I just think that we have a lot of opportunities. And then when the hope is restored, we then may value our lives more. There's things that you behave differently when you have hope. If you have no hope, then you're going to just exist and say it is what it is and I don't care. And so we have to restore hope by giving people of color in general, but particularly Black men, models of what they can achieve. And me and Dr. Pete and the others of color who have made it to this doctoring profession should not be unicorns. We shouldn't be in my clinic. You just don't see a Black male doctor. We have 50 doctors that go in and out of my clinic, and dare I say, we have Dr. Prentice Taylor there, and I'm struggling to find another Black doctor in a building where 50 doctors come in the building, and in a community that looks like us. And so a young person who doesn't see that may not be inspired to think that because if you talk to me, I'm going to sound just like a regular brother. I'm not in there using big words. I'm talking. I'm relatable, and then they may say, "Man, if he can do it, I can do it." And I think we need more of that. And I'm actually talking to myself and saying, make sure that you're visible to these people. make sure that people know you exist so that they will then say, well, if he can do it, I can do it.
Mm.
Yeah, I want to jump in and actually pick up on what Dr. Hampton was saying and provide a different kind of context moving forward, because I'm looking at Pete right now, and I've known Pete for quite a while, but Pete's got on a hoodie, and if he was walking down the street, people would not know that he's a doctor. He would be a black man and possibly a thug. That's the problem sometimes. It's the perception of what a black man represents rather than the reality. All of us represent a different version of a black man, just like a white man. We all represent a different version. And so the reality is there are more men like us than people know. You know, a man could be driving a truck you know, and taking care of a family. I mean, a big family. You know, garbage men. I mean, postmen. I mean, there are all sorts of black men that are providing for their families and their community. But sometimes the notion that people have in their mind, not all people, but many people have in their mind, is this person that I have to be fearful of or is potentially going to harm me. But one of the things that we can do is that we can represent, and I think that all of us has had an opportunity to show what a black man could be and can be, given the opportunities to do so. So I think there's an implied message with us talking about men's health and what we're saying right now in terms of we're not an anomaly. That's the point I mean. We're not an anomaly. There are more people like us behind us. And so I think it's important to make that point so it's clear. Maybe not for this audience, but for some other audiences.
But
And
Joe, how do
each
we
of us,
do how do we do that? I'm thinking of the early '60s doing what we call the movement years. In the late '50s, early '60s, we had a saying that said, "Mammy, mammy, tell me why was a black man born?" Somebody had to pick the cotton.
Mm.
Somebody had to pick the corn. Somebody had to fight for freedom. And that is why a black man was born. And I think that helped create a feeling among some people who became activist oriented, just kind of based on what was going on. I went to a Kwanzaa celebration at Malcolm X a couple of days or so ago, and I was so delighted to see that the auditorium was filled with people. I mean, I didn't expect there to be as many people there as there were because I've been going all the time. And this was the largest audience I had seen in several years. And it was exhilarating just to be there and be among all of those individuals celebrating Kwanzaa and to see the merchants and people with their goods having a good time. And so I guess if we create more opportunities to project certain kinds of behavior and certain kinds of activity, we get to the point, Joe, of where we are articulating, but also preparing and generating the thinking that is necessary to do what you just mentioned.
Well, outstanding. We want to say hey to Sandel Scott, who is here with us. She says hello to everyone. Jack Orloff is here, and he says good evening and happy new year to everyone. Yolanda Williams is here, and she says good evening just as well. Karen Warren Castleberry says congratulations on your anniversary. And Dorothy Murphy is here as well. And she says, "Thank you for your great message, Dr. Hampton. Will you guys continue the conversation?"
I
I'm
just
going to
want to.
pick up on.
Well, you go ahead. I'll come after you.
No, I was just going to. I went to Malcolm X as well. I went on Sunday because I try to get by every year. And what's great about the celebration of Kwanzaa? It's an activity that was developed by us for us, and I try to take full advantage of it. And it does have a set of principles that they suggest people live by. And so um, I just felt good to be in a place where there were black people that were celebrating black people and black culture, and you don't get to see that very often. And so I want to give my hat off and really congratulate the people of Malcolm X because they've been doing this for years. And it's an important event, it's an important activity. And if people didn't go this year, maybe they want to consider going next year. And they may want to actually read up and get an understanding of what Kwanzaa is about.
And so when I think about Mr. Muhammad, I think about the Nation of Islam. It seems like a very engaged audience. And I say that to say we kind of know where our engaged audiences are, right? So in those spaces, and I think Brother Pete would say, well, we got an engaged audience at the barbershop. We got engaged audiences at the churches. We got engaged audiences at the gyms. In fact, what we try to do with Advocate Health is to embed, can we embed clinics in a YMCA or at a community center or at a church and meet people where they are? And I think if we're able to do that, then what we can do is then find ways to teach the population the things that they care about. Now, I may be a hardworking person who wants to feed his family, but I also want to be healthy. So if I have the right messages coming to me in those settings, and I just keep feeding those messages that maybe explain how your diet can affect like your risk for obesity, hypertension, diabetes, stroke, cancer, dementia, all of those things. If we can put those messages in their head and then provide a way for them to do those things in a way that serves them. So instead of stopping by Starbucks and spending $8, maybe I'll go to Sam's and I'll get some animal protein that I can feed myself. All I ate for lunch today was some ground beef. Now, I don't know how much it was exactly because my wife bought it this time, but it was less than $8. and I actually had the nutrition I need for my lunch. So if we can teach those principles and say we can save you some money and keep you healthy, I think that'll help us reach people. But we have to start by going to where people already are gathering. Another thing we're trying to do in our health system is we have to listen to people. And one thing I learned when we talked about this Southside transformation thing we're doing with Trinity Hospital moving to the lakefront is I noticed that immediately people didn't trust us. It's like people are like, instead of saying, great, this is great, we're finally building a hospital in communities of color and investing $1 billion in this community, people are like, what are you trying to get from me? So we're still trying to, even with people of color standing before them, because we've lost so much trust. So we have to literally not only be in front of people and say that we are trying to do some things because we hear you, we see you, but we also have to be empathetic and understand that it may take a minute. They need to see some meat on the bone. Since Dr. Mason's out here, I can talk about meat. We got to see some meat on the bone. And they want to see proof of concept. They need to see that that we're going to really do the things we say. And then over time, we're going to build trust and we're going to earn respect. But what we don't want to do is tell them, think about the mayor who won in New York, right? Imagine if he got into that office saying those things he wanted to do, which leaned pretty left and leaned pretty, you know, uh, in a way that most people may think are extreme. And if he got into office and didn't actually follow through with the not necessarily achieving anything that he said he would achieve, but if he's not fighting for those things, then we're going to lose faith, and then people they're going to stop voting, and they're just going to say he's just like the rest of them. So what we wanted to do is live in a world where we give people hope, and then we follow through with the message of hope. And I just think that in the past we've disappointed people, we've kind of given them hope, and then we don't follow through. And I think those are the types of things, we already know that we've seen what a barbershop can do, and we just got to go into those spaces and continue to raise the hope that they are desperately needing, particularly in today's world where things are so hopeless and chaotic, and people are losing hope because of how the current government in particular is running. So,
one of the things that that I heard from my colleagues, Dr. Hampton and Joe, is creating this environment. Like if you think about what Kwanzaa means and what it meant for congressmen to walk in that room and see it packed like that, that's an environment of hope.
mm-hmm.
That's a dignified environment. So many of our men have hopeless experiences. They have undignified experiences, even with people that are that they put their trust in to take care of them for their health. They've had disrespectful experiences. And so when Dr. Hampton walks in the room and when Joe walks in the room, it represents, because they're not accusing them with the look on their face. They're saying, hey, how you doing? Hey, what's going on? And it's this, if anybody thinks that that's not important, that's somebody who lives in a place of privilege. They get that all the time. But we know that many of our men don't get that. They get looks of suspicion. They get looks of, when we get stopped by the police, there's this natural assumption, like I did something, as opposed to, oh, I turned too fast, or I didn't come to a complete stop. It's like my life is at risk. You know what I mean? I remember having to, at Project Brotherhood, we would employ young high school students. We literally had to talk. We literally had to give a talk on how to conduct yourself when you're stopped by the police. Like, just wrap your brain around that for a minute. These people are paid to take care of us, but we're having to talk to these kids about, this is what you want to say. This is how we had to do demonstrations we had to do for those kids, but that's the reality of the world we live in. And we're like, look, we know, you could be a doctor, lawyer, whatever, but you got to live long enough for that to happen. Right. And so we need to create an environment where you feel comfortable talking to us. Number one, we actually handed our cards to them to say, hey, show them your cards, tell them where you work, so that they know you're not some menace to society. But I'm saying all this to say, imagine having all these undignified, hopeless experiences, and then we want blood pressure to be normal. Then we want blood sugar to be perfectly normal. Or we want people to, go and eat fresh fruit and vegetables. I just been disrespected for 30 years of my life. What do you mean? And so it's important that we recognize where they are. We can't dummy down the message, right? We still got to say, hey, we need you, brother. We need you to take care of yourself so you can take care of your community. And that's the other message that men understand. We understand being a caregiver. So if you want Mr. Jackson to take care of his blood pressure, say, hey, Mr. Jackson, Miss Jackson needs you. Lil Jackson needs you. So you got to take care of you. You just can't eat whatever you want and think that that's okay, because that means you're not going to be here long enough to walk your granddaughter down the aisle. So we have to talk men language. They listen to that. They respond to respectful. Think about what a barbershop is. It's I call it the great equalizer. Nobody cares what your title is. Congressman Davis could come in there. They're like, hey, Congressman Davis. It's like everybody has an opinion. Everybody's valuable. everybody's opinion is thought stuff to be important. So those kind of environments help us to take care of men, but it also helps men to feel valuable and to feel needed.
If
Yeah,
if I
and I'm going to be brief. I just because a thought occurred to me. One of the things that because I was thinking about growing up on the south side of Chicago as a teenager, I experienced, and I think all of us have experienced what they call microaggressions. I got to the point where when I was able to drive and I had my first car and I was able to drive, I was always conscious of I have to be careful because the police are going to pull me over any minute because I'm a young black man and I'm driving the car and I would see them pull up. I would see so that there's this whole stress of being black and being young that you have to deal with that probably other people don't even know. It's constant microaggressions that you have to deal with, and over time they can wear you down and wear you out. I was just thinking about being young and black in the city of Chicago, and, and whether you're good or bad, it ain't easy.
yeah yeah
Well, we
if
have
I
two
could jump in.
questions from. Oh, go ahead, Mohammed. Go
Oh, I'm
ahead.
sorry. Yes, real fast. I was listening to Dr. Pete and Dr. Hampton, and of course Mr. Harrington, and you know, the barbershop came up, and of course, like you said, it's a great equalizer. Once you're in there, they give you your respect as a doctor or a congressman or whoever. But as the conversation go on, they don't really care who you are. It's gonna be raw and it's gonna be intense depending on which barbershop you're at. And but one thing about it, after the jokes and everything, I'm thinking about my barbershop in particular, the one that I go to. They have a soft side to them and they have a tender side because I mean, if your health is a concern, the language is going to be raw, but they're going to tell you to go to the doctor. They're going to tell you what you need to do or suggest something. I mean, the love is there, but again, the language is going to be different. Um, but it even has to start even earlier than the barbershop. And you talk about representation and going to these high schools and grade schools and seeing someone that looks like them that's a doctor or a lawyer. I had a sister on yesterday out of Houston, attorney Sadia Kareem, and she dealt with and she says injustice at the early age of 10 years old, which inspired her to become a lawyer, and she's known in Houston as a warrior lawyer. And she's a fighter, but she has these mock trials, these mock courtrooms, with the young people to come. And one thing she did mention also, one of my questions were how well, talk about how people should know how to act, how they should behave, what they should experience when entering a courtroom. And she said, well, one thing that those young in particular, they need to know how to present themselves because, again, as we said earlier, we shouldn't, but we judge based off of appearance. But she noticed if they're not dressed a certain way, if a sister or woman is coming in with a bonnet on or a halter top, the lawyer, the judge is going to speak to them in a particular way, and she said in her own language, she said, she had to check them because this is my client. You can't talk to him that way. At the same token, though, she'll pull them to the side or afterwards and let them know that the way you present yourself is how you're treated. But again, it's all about representation, whether it's on that level or seeing a doctor or a lawyer that looks like them or whatever. It's about representation. But the barbershop it's never going to be a place where we shouldn't be at. It's always number one. But we definitely have to start earlier with these young people so they can get some sense that I mean because they're learning all the negative stuff early, so they might as well get something positive and get something positive from some people that can really represent them in the right way. So thank you.
So we got two quick questions from Instagram, and we have one inbox question. And actually, it's not a question; it's a statement. Joyce Brenda Ballinger says, "You are absolutely right, Mr. Mandine. They learn everything negative. That's social media. We need to work on that." So thank you for your statement, Ms. Ballinger. Our questions off Instagram is one, we talk about resolutions. What should we look for in our physicians at the first of the year? What does a true physical look like, and what should we be asking our doctors for? And the second question off Instagram actually states, in reference to men, you spoke about stressors. I'm a man. What I see on the news right now with what Trump is doing is stressful. What will happen to us with what's going on? So those are those two. I'm going to leave those to you guys, and I'm going back mute.
You gonna go, Dr. Hampton?
Yeah, I'll keep it simple. It's so funny because some of the things that you need to do are very simple because a blood pressure just being checked is something you just got to do because it's really the foundation for your risk for a heart attack or a stroke. So you really want to get in front of a doctor so they can look at that, and they also need to get in front of you to talk about your family history. So I would start collecting some data. I know a lot of times in communities of color we don't talk about our family histories, but let's talk about whether or not there's a family history of something specific like dementia, something that my wife's dad had to deal with. If you have that risk, then we need to let the doctor know so they can then give you some advice on how to deal with those things. There are other things that you need to be thinking about in terms of prevention. I call it the low hanging fruit. Every adult over the age of 45 up to about 75 should be screened for colon cancer. And believe it or not, they have a new test that is not readily available, but there will be a blood test for colon cancer called Shield available. And so eventually we'll be able to genetically take a blood test and actually detect colon cancer, which is amazing. And I think that the colonoscopy will probably never go away, but if you can take a blood test to do that, that's going to be amazing. So, but for right now, if it's a stool test or a Cologuard, where it's a stool test will cover you for a year, Cologuard will cover you for 3 years, and then of course the colonoscopy, if normal, it will cover you for 10 years. Obviously, if they see polyps, they may have to check it again in 3 to 5 years, or depending on your history. Vaccines in the current environment are not as highly favored, but we know that without vaccines, we wouldn't have things like mumps and measles in check. So you need to decide, whether or not you need to have vaccines. Young people do things like, there's vaccines for young people and older people. But what I'm trying to convey is that let's imagine you are at risk for. We've been seeing a lot of flu and pneumonias this season, a little bit more than usual. But if you get a pneumonia vaccine, you only need a couple in your lifetime, you reduce your risk by 70-80% of dying of pneumonia. I mean, who would not get a vaccine knowing that statistical fact? So you want to make sure you do that. You want to talk about your prostate because a PSA is an easy thing to do, a blood test. And then for some men, they may get a prostate exam. But if you have I had literally 2 people today come into clinic, just had a simple blood test and their PSA was elevated. So now these people are being referred to urology to determine if they need to have additional testing like a prostate biopsy. So I consider seeing a doctor an opportunity to get the low-hanging fruit, the things that you got to get a prostate exam or PSA. You have to do the colon test. You have to make sure your blood pressure is okay. You got to do blood tests to make sure your blood sugar is okay. Because these are things that are easily corrected and or intervened upon by simply having a conversation at least once a year. And if you come to my clinic and you have not had any medical problems whatsoever, then I can dive into the lifestyle factors that will then hopefully keep you where you are. So I just think all men who hear our voice tonight will learn. They'll get so much out of just not being fearful. Again, we call fear false evidence appearing real. The worst thing you can do is be afraid of something because you think we can't do something about it. But most things that we get early, we can literally fix and reverse or put into remission. But we can't fix it if we don't know it exists. So I think that's just a basic message that I hope people can hear.
Yeah, I'll just say this, and this is not to repeat what Dr. Hampton just said, but for me, I look at it from the ABCDs. A is A1C, B is blood pressure, C is cholesterol and colonoscopy, D is check your vitamin D. And then I said ABCDs with an S. You know, black people love to put S's on stuff. Okay, they also have S on it. Okay, but that's neither here nor there.
Mhm.
But S, the two S's is stress and sleep. So you really do want to convey to your doctor what your sleep pattern is like, if you sleep at all. And I don't mean just laying down. I'm talking about like actual REM sleep where you're dreaming, right? And then also your stress. And so for black men and black women too, for that matter, we're so accustomed to stress that it's almost like when you ask somebody, "Are you stressed?" What's normal to you is not normal. It's not normal, right? So when your provider starts to dive into that, they'll start to realize that some of the stuff you're dealing with, you need to see a therapist. You need to get some help with. The other thing I would say is 80% of the heavy lifting is not in those tests. The heavy lifting happens when you leave the office. That means changing from a sedentary lifestyle to actually exercising, changing your diet to nutritionally dense whole foods, right? So it's like I have to convince my patient, you did a lot by coming in here. Fantastic. Now, the real work happens when you walk out of this door. The decisions that you make. And I know you have every reason to consume highly processed food, right? Because you're stressed, all the walls are closing in on you. And so you need something to make you feel good, to take those serotonin levels up, right? To make you just feel happy. But it doesn't last. So you eat all that sugar, you eat all those carbs. Now that Dr. Mason ain't here, but we get to talk about like you eat all those carbs to make you feel good. But guess what? It's not going to last. So the heavy lifting happens when you leave. Hopefully you have a provider that gives that empowers you to make good decisions, that gives you some tools around taking baby steps. It's not about, I'm going to lose 50 pounds by the time I come back, Dr. Thomas. I said, look, just lose three. Just lose three. That's all I want. I want to lose 50. I know, but by the time you come back here, I want you to be 3 pounds lighter. So setting measurable small goals so people don't stress themselves out over, damn, I'm not gonna be 50 pounds lighter. Well, guess what? That was a high hanging fruit, as Dr. Hampton said. So that's what I would leave you with. And also you wanna have a regular follow up. So when you get those labs done, when are we going to discuss those labs? What do those labs mean? So I'm almost of the mindset that you need two appointments. One to get all that stuff done. Then the comeback is, all right, here's what it means. Here's the situation that we're in. And maybe it's not as bad as you think. And so that's what I'll leave you with.
Can I jump in real fast, Dr. Pete? It's almost like you really need three because if it's a new patient, you want to find out I think you kind of alluded to this earlier. You want to find out, you mentioned sleep, which is, I'm guilty of not getting enough sleep, but really, I mean, do they have some place where they can sleep? Are they, do they have a home? Are they able to eat? What's going on with you before you even get to the conversation about what's going on with you, as far as your health is concerned, what's your situation is like? I mean, what's going on? What's leading into the stress and to the illness? So it's almost like you have to do an interview before you even find out what's going on with the patient.
Mandine, if you don't mind, you don't have to say any names, but can you please share with the panel about a conversation that a certain senior had the other night with the doctor?
I think I know. Um, I'm trying to see how that ties in, no. But
Well, it ties in about what Dr. Pete, when he talked about sleep and stress and how you deal with stress and how your doctor evaluates you. So, a particular
um,
patient saw a healthcare professional and they actually did the scores of the depression test when they were having the conversation with them.
mm.
And so people can understand why these questions are asked. That's what it is. And what was the questions, Mandine, and what was the answers?
If I remember correctly, it was one of the questions was asking a older patient, do they feel inadequate? Do they feel like they're not enough, or kind of leading just the mental breakdown. And this patient is they're 90 years of age, and they looked at the doctor dead in the eyes and said, "I'm a bad mother." So in other words, none of that applies to me. And then the doctor chuckled and said, "I love it. This is wonderful." But as the doctor continued to ask questions, something it was kind of about the same field of questions. Do you feel that physically you're not, your best, or you're not where you want to be, or you're not where you used to be, things of that sort. And this was a female patient, 90 years of age, and she looked the doctor in the eyes again and said, I'm the prettiest woman in here. So the confidence is there, even though they're lacking in some areas, it may be early stages of dementia and things, but that also shows that we talked about physical exercise, but we also need that mental exercise too, and that's where human contact comes into play. Reading, even listening to the radio, just to help stimulate and exercise that mind. But and the pandemic showed us, if nothing else, how, in lack of a better term, we were caught with our pants down. We wasn't ready. It showed us that they had to teach grown people how to wash their hands. It showed us that we didn't have enough. We wasn't ready if we didn't have any food in the house, because certainly we wasn't growing any food of our own. And Dr. Hampton, you're talking about, and I would love to talk to you on camera, especially because I've been on this mission about food, real food, and food byproducts, because that's what much of what we're eating anyway is not real food. It's just something that tastes good, but it's something that you can find in the laboratory. But it's just we there's so many things that's coming at us, physically and mentally. It's just that conversations like this are needed, and they have to be ongoing. And yeah, so this is a battle that we're in.
So when people ask what is that depression conversation that's had, those are those questions that your doctor asks you. And just be honest with them when they ask you those questions. I thought everybody sent in a bunch of hearts about that question. So I think that's great. And then now they're prepared when they go to the doctor, saying that the doctor is not wacky. These questions are necessary to ask so they can actually just see exactly where you're at and how they can assist you. Well, I know you guys hate to hear me say this, but it is our time. I know you guys hate it. I know you hate it. So we're going to go around as always and do our until next Mondays. So go ahead, Pete. What's our until next Monday?
Until next Monday, I would recommend that as men, for the men that's in our audience, or for the audience that knows men, to encourage them to make their appointment. It's the beginning of the year, and to go in and get those labs that we talked about, the ABCDs, and to remember to share their family history, whatever that they know, and also to remember that 80% of the work, congratulations, you went to the appointment, but most of the work is going to happen with you leaving that office and changing behavior. And we know it's not easy. We know society is setting us up for the okey doke, right? For the in the words of Eddie Murphy, the banana in the tailpipe trick, right? uh, but with community, see, that's setting up community. And we talked about earlier. So with Dr. Hampton and I, we were in a fraternity together, right? So I know those guys, they keep me accountable, and all of us getting to where we got to, it was about community. So even though, in spite of this, only 3% or 2% of the physicians uh, in America is actually Black men, I was in a community full of future physicians. It wasn't a thought to my brain that was I going to be here. It was like I had a group of guys and we were all studying organic chemistry together, and we all had hoodies on, going to study at Xavier, you know. And so we need that community. Our men need that community. That's what Project Brotherhood was. It was a community of folks taking care of each other. So that's what I would leave you until next month. Dr. Hampton, you gonna
I
tell us?
think I'll join in. So I think what I'll leave you guys with is you mentioned how when you set goals, it is a new year, and many of you guys have heard about SMART goals. So I'm just going to wrap up with that. And I will say this: um, they just as for Brother Muhammad, and I would be happy to speak on your platform. They changed GMO on the label to bioengineered. And the question is, why would they do that? Why would they go from genetically modified to bioengineered? Because when people see GMO, they know they're going to avoid that. So they have to change the words to fool us.
Yeah.
They just did this. And it's just so disgusting that instead of the government finding ways to protect us, they're giving companies ways to, avoid the truth. So that's what we're dealing with, guys. I want real food on my table, not this genetically modified stuff. So goals should be smart, specific. That's the S, meaning that you set a goal that is, you don't say, I want to lose weight. You're very specific about how much weight you want to lose. And I'm an obesity doctor, so I'm thinking about weight. You want it to be measurable. So obviously you can measure your weight. It's something you can measure and look at a scale, but it's not just a scale. It could be my belt's getting a little, I'm moving the notches in the right direction. I may gain muscle while I'm losing fat. So something that's measurable. It's got to be achievable. And I love this idea of what Dr. Pete was saying. Just give me 3 pounds. I don't need 50 pounds because it's likely that if you set a goal that high, you may not achieve it. So I think it needs to be achievable, relevant. It's got to align with something that means something to you. Why do you want to lose weight? And maybe it's to get on your knees with your grandbabies. Maybe it's to get into that dress if you're a woman, for the wedding or for your daughter's wedding. And finally, it has to be time-based. When are we going to lose those 3 pounds? Is it going to be in a month, 2 months, or 3 months? So if you make your goals smart, what'll happen is they're more achievable because you've taken the time to organize it in a way that's likely to occur. So that'll be my until next Monday.
All right, outstanding. Well, Joe, you're until next Monday.
I'm going to take a different course. I'm going to start out. I'm going to offer up a definition for health that I like, and I've shared it with Pete in the past. But I'm going to start by saying you are more powerful than you realize. You're the one that can make a change in your life. This is the beginning of a new year, and you have an opportunity to change. Take control of your life, make better decisions, and you'll be all right. Now, I want to offer up the definition of health because I like it because it encompasses more than just health. Health is the behavioral, cultural, economic, educational, physical, and spiritual state of being in which individuals have the ability to enjoy life and, most importantly, contribute positively to their family, community, and society.
Wow, outstanding. Thank you. Well, Doug, you're until next Monday.
I just want to say I really appreciate Joseph's discussion of health, but I want to add to what Dr. Hampton said. We said the government's supposed to be here to protect you. Talked about GMOs. They're about ready to change the vaccination requirements for children.
Mm.
And I think it's going to be very, very important not to take those as perfect, but to have a discussion with your own pediatrician, your family doctor, because I think there are differences of opinion. Some are politically motivated and some are based on science. So to have your best health, have that discussion with the doctor that you trust.
Outstanding. Well, Mandine, you're until next Monday. What would you like to leave our viewers with until next Monday?
Well, first of all, I just want to thank you, Nicole, for inviting me on. I didn't know it. I really learned a lot, and I really enjoyed being on the platform with this evening. Thank you, Congressman Davis, because I know you are the reason. Monday is this, I'm a big proponent of health. Get in the gym. If you can't get in the gym, it's warming up this weekend. Get to your nearest sports or start walking. Lift some heavy weights. Just start moving. You're not too old, too young to start working out, and it's very important because the older we get, the bone density starts to there is a possibility. There, not a possibility that we can't reverse that. So, but the only way that can happen is by lifting heavy weights. But also watch what you eat. You know, eat to live. Don't just eat for enjoyment. And I'm a big proponent of fasting. I believe that because they're gonna lie about what's in there. So let's give our body a chance to clear it out. And the best way to do that is by giving our body, our digestive system a break and fast bed. And you can do it. I know a lot of people say, well, I can't go without eating for a certain amount of hours. Well, you slept for about 8 to 10 hours and you didn't have your sleep, so I think you'll be okay. So try some fasting from time to time. So until next Monday. That's what I would like to leave with. And again, thank you again.
Outstanding. Thank you so very much. Well, Congressman, as always, take us home.
Well, let me tell you, I feel pretty good. My great nephew called me earlier today and he said, Uncle Dan, I hear you went to Chicago State. And I say, yeah, I did. He said, well, I think I'm going to transfer there and help them out with their basketball team. He says, I'm in a junior college right now, and I have a scoring average of about 20 points a game. And I see where they need a little help. And so I think I'll come back to Chicago. and, and so I felt pretty good about that, knowing that Chicago State may get this guy who's good. But it's really been a great evening and a great evening because of the positive expressions in terms of no matter what life is, life can be better. It can be different. I thought of one of my favorite expressions that says, I bargained with life for a penny and life would pay no more. However, I begged at evening time when I counted my scanty store. But I found that life is a just employer. He gives you what you ask. But once you have set the wages, then you must bear the task. I worked for a menial hire only to learn dismayed that whatever price I had asked of life, life would have willingly paid, meaning essentially that whatever it is that you put into it, that's pretty much what you're going to get out of it. And if you put good stuff in all likelihood, you'll get good stuff in return. If you don't, then the chances are pretty good that you'll get something that you're not looking for. You'll get something different. So, thank you, men, for expressing hope and possibility. And as long as there is hope, then the sky becomes the limit. So it's been a great evening, good discussion. Thank you all. I'll head back to Washington on tomorrow and try to be as positive as I can be, even though our president, our commander in chief, have decided to take him another country and see if he can't run it. And of course, our Constitution says you're not supposed to do that, but that's what he's trying to do. So have a good evening. Be as positive that we can stop him as you can be. Thanks. Have a good night.
Good night, all.
All right.
All right, good night.